The religious really do spend a lot of their time making complete fools of themselves because, well, of course they do. What else can they do? If they were remotely rational or able to handle their place in the actual real world, they wouldn't believe the idiotic things they do. So here we go again into another clear example of blind fifis in faith. Coming up next. So today we're going to take a quick look at Darwin to Jesus, and I know what you're going to say. He's an idiot. Yes, he is, but this is going to show one more reason why he's an idiot and why there are so many other idiots out there. He's obsessed with his own feelings, and that explains pretty much everything else, doesn't it? This is why the religious have so many problems just dealing with objective reality, because they're irrational dumbasses. So, away, fair viewers, away into insanity.
This is Darwin to Jesus. Hope you're all doing well. So I used to be a pretty mean atheist. I had almost no empathy for others. I enjoyed pushing people's buttons and upsetting them. But even then, and for as long as I can remember, I've always had a complete and total aversion and dislike for the idea of subjective morality.
Why is it that the religious, whenever they play the "I used to be an atheist" card, they always make themselves the biggest assholes imaginable? It's like they were proud to be complete pricks. I wasn't an asshole when I was a Christian, and I'm not an asshole today. Granted, the religious would probably disagree, as would a lot of people who wear their emotions on their sleeves, but I don't care about that. I care about the reality, and if you knew me in real life, you'd know that I was one of the first people who would be out there to help absolutely everyone. I'm the first one to help little old ladies load their groceries at the store. I'm constantly doing nice things for complete strangers just because they're there. It's how I made friends with the couple across the street from me when some lunatic lady smashed through their chain link fence in her car and then tried to drive away. So I ran right over there, pulled out my phone, took pictures of her license plate, then I called the police and I reported it. The whole thing happened without anything from them, and now my neighbors have a nice new fence, and I have some nice new friends. I didn't have to do that. I could have just looked the other way like most other people would, but I don't. I don't do that. I'm doing stuff like that all the time. Granted, I'm also painfully honest. Don't ask me a question you don't want a truthful answer to, because I'm going to tell you exactly what I think. Yes, I think you're fat. Deal. However, I don't think there's nearly enough honesty in society these days, which allows some of the most ludicrous ideas to fester. No, you are not an anthropomorphic animal. Grow the hell up and seek professional help. I don't care how you feel. I don't care if you like it. I care if you are dealing with the real world in some rational way based on evidence that you can present. And lots of people don't like that. Too fucking bad.
Whenever I hear someone saying they believe morality is subjective, I simply don't believe them.
Which doesn't actually mean anything. Your fifis are irrelevant. I mean, they're probably relevant to you, but they're sure the hell not to anybody else. I mean, I could just run around and whenever somebody bangs on my door, which luckily happens pretty infrequently anymore, and they tell me they believe in God or leprechauns or whatever, it doesn't really matter, I can just laugh in their face and tell them I don't believe they're that stupid. They probably are, but I'm going to pretend I don't believe it. But that doesn't actually accomplish anything, does it? If you're just going to play make-believe, then you're a bigger idiot than I thought. The reason I'm even doing another one of Darwin to Jesus' videos is because I came across a couple of his social media posts and was reminded just what a complete dipshit this guy is. I'm sorry, nobody cares about your own personal delusions. What I say I believe is what I believe, whether you like it or not. If someone they tells me they believe in ghosts or Bigfoots or monsters or whatever, anything they happen to come up with, I believe them. I might not respect the belief, but I still believe that's what's going on in their head because nobody gets to tell me what's in their own head except the individual directly involved. This guy has some serious problems. He needs a rubber room.
I want to hopefully give an analogy here for why I don't believe them and why subjective morality is completely and totally absurd. Imagine two friends decide to go golfing together. The first friend hits his ball down the fairway. Now it's the second friend's turn. The second friend takes a ball out of his pocket and he throws it down the fairway. Immediately, the first friend objects. "You can't do that," he says. The second friend says, "Yes, I can. I just did."
Obviously, he can do that. He has the physical ability to do that. That's just against the rules of golf, just like a soccer player can't just pick up the ball in his hands and run downfield and still be playing soccer correctly. Yes, he can still do it. He has the capacity to carry the ball, but that's against the agreed upon rules of the game, and people are going to stop playing with him if that's what he does. Can and are allowed to are two entirely different things. If we apply this to morality, someone can go out and murder someone. Well, obviously he can do it because he just did. What society means is that you're not allowed to do that. You will face consequences if you do that, and people will put you in prison if you do. There are laws on the books making this thing that you did illegal. So I think that's where this guy is coming from, his personal religious beliefs that people aren't allowed to do the things that they do, that he doesn't happen to like, and he's probably basing all of this on his religious beliefs in the Bible and crap like that. It's why I'm asking a lot of well-deserved questions about his claims of not accepting subjective morality when he was a self-described asshole atheist. I'm not saying it's impossible after all. There are atheists out there who are moral realists and all, but I just don't think that it makes a whole lot of sense. Let's see if he can justify it with more than, "but I really, really want it to be true." Probably not though, right?
Do you have something that shows I'm in the wrong? The first friend admits he doesn't have anything that would settle the matter. Actually, he doesn't believe in any set of standard golf rules.
This is where the analogy really starts to look stupid. There are a demonstrable set of standard golf rules. There are tons of websites out there that spell it out very clearly. If his friend had a smartphone, he could just look it up and prove it easily. This is just two idiots, and coming from an already established idiot, that's not exactly a surprise, is it? Now, granted, since they're just playing a friendly game, they can both agree to throw out whatever rules they want and just do almost anything, so long as the course they're playing on doesn't care. They'd probably object to damaging the greens or driving their cars around and doing donuts or things like that, but otherwise, if it affects nobody but the two people playing and they are in agreement, it doesn't really matter, does it? This actually plays well into the whole subjective morality thing, but I'm going to wait until he hangs himself a little more because this analogy is really, really dumb. It's clearly someone who has no clue about the actual reality he lives in. He doesn't know what it's actually like, and he doesn't care. Big surprise there.
Those don't exist, he says, and he doesn't believe it's possible for them to exist. Golf rules are not real.
Except they demonstrably are, at least within some kind of structured play. If you don't want to play structured, then don't. I don't care. And if nobody else cares, that's fine. There are all kinds of videos of people just doing strange things on golf courses on YouTube. They're just out there having fun. Nobody cares because it's not in a tournament setting and it's done with the consent of everyone involved. The idea of everyone is just going to come back, I think, so let's all wait for it. However, I doubt anyone is going to ignore the fact that there are official, established, codified rules of golf that people have come up with over the years that people in specific settings like tournaments, etc., 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 are expected to follow. They are not objective rules of golf in the same sense as objective morality, things that exist beyond the will of people, but they are certainly rules, and if you say there aren't any, you're just demonstrably wrong. But let's get back to him making a complete fool of himself, because I guess it's a whole lot more entertaining than the alternative.
They are anti-real. This first friend is actually just upset because the second friend isn't playing golf like he, the first friend, personally prefers.
Yeah, I suppose. And the first friend has every right to just walk away and stop playing golf with the second friend if that's what they want to do. If this was a tournament setting where the established rules of golf were being enforced, then the guy walking around with the golf ball, they would be penalized. In some circumstances, they might even be ejected from the tournament. They would not be allowed to compete. Granted, they could go somewhere else and walk around with golf balls in their pockets all day long, and nobody would care at all. There would be absolutely no penalties levied against them because the rules in that case simply do not apply. I've got a big bag of tennis balls sitting in the closet for the dogs. I don't have to care about the established rules of tennis because I'm not playing tennis. I can go out and I can throw the balls for the dogs. I don't even have to be using a racket. I don't have to care because the rules in my situation simply do not apply to me. Now, translate that to Wimbledon, and that's an entirely different matter, isn't it?
The second friend that threw the golf ball, upon realizing this, laughs and points out that he has just as much right to be mad as the first friend for not playing how he prefers.
And so they should probably go their separate ways and not play golf together ever again. That's a voluntary activity. Nobody is holding a gun to your head and forcing you to engage. You could never play golf again, and nobody would care but you. Your decision to play or not only affects you and no one else, assuming that you're not screwing up the course for other people or stopping the people behind you from playing, etc., etc. That's not how societies actually work, though, which is something I'm sure he doesn't understand. That's yet another reason why this is such a terrible analogy. Not that it's exactly a surprise. So, anyway, onward. I think I need a good laugh.
And he's absolutely right. This is subjective morality. If morality is subjective, then there are no moral rules or obligations that are above us.
Nor do there need to be. There are no rules for golf that are above us. We made it all up, just like we made up morality. If you put yourself into a golf tournament, you agree by your very presence to follow the established rules of golf, just like if you put yourself into an existing society, you agree by your very presence to follow the rules that said society has established or face the consequences thereof. This is why the sovereign citizen idiots get into so much trouble, because they don't understand that just being there at all means they are accountable to society's laws. It doesn't matter if you like it or not, you're there, and thus you are responsible. If you don't want to be responsible, hey, there are planes leaving the country all the time. Be on one. Find somewhere else with laws that you happen to like better. It's really not that hard.
When we say that is wrong, we should be saying I don't prefer to do that behavior personally, because that's what wrong actually boils down to.
Says you. Because in reality, wrong is whatever society has collectively decided is wrong in the moment. We know that laws, which are the codified morals of that particular society, can and do change over time. You don't have to like it. It doesn't matter if you like it. It's still the reality of what's going on. But of course, the religious, they're not concerned about what is actually true, only what makes them personally feel good. That's where moral realism goes completely wrong. It's trying to take the inherent subjectivity out of it because they are uncomfortable with the idea that stuff can and does change. Too bad.
It's personal preferences. In subjective morality, there is no actual right or wrong. You have your preferences, and I have mine.
That's not really how it works, though, is it? It isn't, you just do whatever you want to do. It's, you are held accountable to the overall decisions of the collective because morality is about improving the well-being of all. That's the part that a lot of people just can't get through their heads. Humans decide what is, at least in the short term, best for everyone involved, and whether you like it or not, it comes right down to might makes right. The people collectively make decisions either through democratic vote or fiat from a king or a dictator or whatever, and the people are held accountable to those decisions by mechanisms within the society itself, a military, a police force, even mob rule in some situations. If you break the rules of a small community, if the rest of the people living there decide that you're unfit to remain, then they can just throw you out and there's no higher law to appeal to. Then you've got to abide by their decisions whether you like it or not. You are going away because they want you to go away. And if they decide, and keep in mind I'm saying this as a completely independent community where there's nothing above them to hold them accountable, but if they decide that they just ought to kill your ass, then they can kill your ass, and there's not a whole lot you can do about that either. This is how the real world actually works, whether you like it or not. Your wishes and your dreams and your personal emotional comfort mean absolutely nothing.
Your preferences are just as valid as everyone else's.
That's still not how this works, though, is it? And this, I think, leads to a lot of confusion among the religious. So let's slow down and spell this out and use really small words so they understand. See, for the religious, I think, they are looking for some authority figure in the sky to tell them what they are and are not allowed to do, such that they don't have to think about morality or, let's be really honest, anything else at all. Because, thinking is hard and stuff. So they're looking for a hard and fast rule book that they can just mindlessly follow and just be done with it. But that's not how reality works. Reality is about dealing with the world in which you actually live as best as you can, given the parameters that you happen to exist within. It's not easy, it's not emotionally comforting, it's just real. Morals are humanity's attempt to make life a little easier. Easier in big air quotes. We decide how we'd like to live, and what we'd like to happen to us, and how we'd like to be treated, and if enough people within that society that we exist in agree, those become the moral laws of the land. None of it is inherently right, and none of it is inherently wrong. There is no objectivity whatsoever, because there's no such thing as inherent right or wrong in the first place. It's just what works within that given social situation, or at least you hope so, because there's plenty of societies out there that are just, inherently broken, where everyone is miserable and they don't have the things they need to survive, and their lives are full of violence and pain, etc. That's kind of what morality was meant to avoid, but it's not something that can just be imposed from above. It has to be adopted at the societal level. It changes. You don't have to like it. It doesn't matter if you like it. This is just the world that we actually live in. The religious really hate having to deal with reality, which is why they have such a hard time getting any of this through their heads. Oh well, too bad. Learn to deal.
So rape and murder and theft aren't wrong. They are just things some people happen to not like, just as I happen to not like sugar in my coffee. There isn't anything wrong with my wife putting sugar in her coffee. It's simply not something I prefer.
That's a stupid analogy. Whether you put sugar in your coffee or not doesn't affect anyone but you. I don't like coffee at all. I mean, I did once upon a time. I used to drink it literally by the gallon, but now I just can't stand it. That doesn't affect you any more than your coffee habits affect me. Morals, though, they absolutely do affect everyone around you. That's the difference. There are behaviors out there that have an inherent impact on other people. You drinking coffee doesn't matter, but you abusing other people absolutely does. That's why we pass laws against it. That doesn't make those laws objectively right or wrong, but it helps make society work better. It helps people have universal understanding of what's expected of them. And the religious really have to get over this ludicrous idea that they are somehow special, because they're not. This is the world that you live in. Deal.
If morality is subjective, that's all it is, a personal, arbitrary, meaningless preference with no substance or real meaning.
Yep, and it doesn't matter if you like it or not. This is where the religious, and to be fair, a lot of non-religious people as well, are completely out of whack with reality. You are not special. You never have been, and you never will be. In the grand scheme of things, you are no more important than an ant. You're born, you live, and you die, and then you're forgotten about. That's the world you actually live in. It doesn't matter if you like it. That's what's demonstrably true. And there are a lot of people who just can't handle the reality, so they just make up comforting stories in their heads, sometimes including God's, so that they don't have to feel so depressed about the world that actually exists. But that doesn't make the real world go away, does it? This is the world that you live in, and you have to learn to deal. So why don't you give it a shot? Because it's honestly not that hard.
The rapist's opinion is no less valid than the non-rapist's opinion.
Except there are social penalties for raping someone. You don't seem to think about that. People are held accountable for their actions, or at least we try to. And here's another thing. A lot of people get really depressed because not every single criminal out there gets caught. Welcome to the real world. This is why they make up heavens and hells, because they really wish that justice could be universal. It's just not. That's just not a realistic expectation. We can only do the best that we can do, and some people are always going to slip through the cracks. Some people are going to be so powerful that the law doesn't apply to them in practice. I know that's disappointing. I think so too, but it is part of the real world that we actually live in, whether you like it or not. Seriously, deal!
There is no moral truth, there is no right or wrong. Many subjectivists will be upset about how I've represented subjectivism, but what I have said is accurate.
I'm not upset because a lot of that is accurate. So what? Because here's the thing. That is the world that you actually live in. You're the one having the problem dealing with it, not me. Now, I am currently having a discussion over on Reddit where a theist showed up with the standard "something can't come from nothing" nonsense, and I called them out on it. Someone else got mad because I was being realistic. Yeah, so what? We need to stop pandering to these people's feelings. It's time to grow the hell up and deal with the actual world that you live in, like it or not. I don't have to baby you. In fact, I think that's why you're probably the way that you are, because nobody gave you the facts and insisted that you grow the hell up and deal with them. We need to stop pandering to this stupidity. You people are ostensibly adults. Act like it.
In subjectivism, there are no moral truths, there are just opinions and preferences. That's what it means. This is not morality, this is nonsense.
That's your claim. This is reality whether you like it or not. Just because it doesn't stroke your childish ego, that doesn't make it just go away, and that's your problem. You don't want to live in the world that you actually do. Too bad. This is the only world that there is, and you thinking you get to make up comforting lies because you really wish it was different, that doesn't make it different. It doesn't change to cater to your wishes and dreams. This is what you've got. Take it or leave it, because it really doesn't matter which, because it's still not going away.
When I see a video of a pit bull attacking an old man, I know that the cameraman who is sitting there filming should be helping. He's in the wrong. When I say he is wrong, I don't mean that he did something that I personally happen to not prefer. I mean he has violated a standard that is outside of us both and that we're both subject to.
Except you can't prove that. You are just so attached to your standard that you can't see past it. That's a you problem. Now, granted, a lot of people are like that, even the non-religious. They get so attached to society's social rules that when things do start to change, as they inevitably do, they just can't handle it. They fail to realize that these rules were all just made up in the first place. Just because you really like the rule doesn't mean that the rule is objectively true. You are the one in the wrong here. And you might want to do something about that.
Subjectivists will say the cameraman was wrong, but really, if they were to be consistent, they should say, I personally don't prefer to film men getting attacked by dogs. That's all they'd actually be saying under subjectivism.
So, you're complaining about language. Are you out of your mind? If I say something is wrong, I am just expressing my personal opinion. It means nothing unless that opinion is shared by other people to the point that society as a whole adopts that view in some demonstrable way. Because we all do it. I drove past a dead raccoon a couple of days ago on the street. Now, I don't see a lot of raccoons out here, although I do know they exist, but it's really, really rare to see a dead one. I don't know the circumstances that got it run over. I mean, clearly it was in the road because its body was left in the middle of the road, but let's just assume for the second that someone purposely hit the raccoon. I'm going to say that's wrong based on my own personal subjective moral view that causing harm to others, even animals, just for the hell of it, is wrong. Would that get that person arrested and taken to jail for doing it? I don't know. I really don't. There are animal cruelty statutes, certainly, but how do you prove that it was done on purpose and wasn't an accident? There's a lot of ways you can look at it, and I'm sure that the guy who did it, whoever it was that did it, under my circumstances, which of course may or may not be true, would have probably gotten a slap on the wrist at best and sent off about their way. Why? Because it's not objectively wrong. I think it is, subjectively, but who cares about me? Who cares about you? We can all play these silly what-if games, and none of it actually matters. You just have to learn to deal with the reality that you're actually in. That's a dead raccoon. Sad, but that's the end of it.
To act as if moral subjectivism means anything when all you're telling me is your preferences is so absurd it's insulting.
No, that's you, because that's all you're doing. You are so blinded by your absurd religious biases that you can't understand that you're doing the exact same thing and pretending otherwise. This is really why I laugh so hard at the religious and moral realists, let's be honest, because they're all doing this. But I really feel this thing. Okay, so what? But what I feel matters. Says who? Because what you feel means no more than what I feel. I don't care what you feel. I only care what is actually real. Is it a shame that there was a dead raccoon? Sure. Is it a shame that people throw their pets out into the streets to fend for themselves when they get bored with them? Yes, absolutely. Damn straight. Does it still happen? Of course it does. How you feel about the reality doesn't stop it from being the reality. That's why we've got a new kitten, and why we might end up with quite a few more. Because my moral standards, my subjective moral standards, are a whole lot better than those of other people who don't take care of their animals. Or at least, in my own personal opinion, that's true. You're welcome to disagree. I don't care. It doesn't really matter because we all have to make these decisions for ourselves.
Rape is wrong. It's not something I happen to not prefer doing. It's wrong. Period.
Not in the Bible it isn't. In fact, rapists get rewarded by having their victims married off to them for further abuse. It's like this guy doesn't have the slightest idea what it says in his own stupid book. That can't be right, can it?
This is why I have never been a subjective moralist, and I don't believe people when they say they are, because they either don't understand what it actually means, or they do understand and they insist it still is morality, even though it carries absolutely no weight or authority and is just a fancy way of telling others about your preferences. And why should anyone care about your preferences? I don't.
This entire video is just dumbass here telling people his own personal preferences though, right? Then he tries to cast it as absolutely true because that's what he wishes was the case, even though it demonstrably isn't. But I feel it! So what? This is one reason, one among many, that Darwin to Jesus is such a laughable joke, and why I don't really spend a lot of time bothering with this moron, even though he pops up a lot. However, I know this is how a lot of people think, religious and non-religious alike, so it's at least handy for pointing out just how dumb it all is. I mean, seriously, learn how to deal with the real world and stop being a complete idiot. Stop making a fool out of yourself. Stop whining and crying because you really wish the world was different. Because it's not. And it's not going to change no matter how much you hate it. Grow up and learn to deal with it. This is really where we're at. These people are ostensibly adults, and I know that doesn't really mean anything, especially today, but let's play make-believe. As an adult, you need to deal with the world that you're actually in. You need to be able to set aside your childish fifis and just accept the world as it actually is, no matter how it makes you feel. Why do so many people have such a hard time with that? I'd really like someone to explain, because I think that would be a really interesting conversation. Not that it actually matters, because you can't reason with the inherently unreasonable, can you? These people don't want to deal. They have to, but they can't, so they just make shit up because it makes them feel better. If they could actually learn to deal, if they could actually stop putting their fifis and their faith first, then maybe the world wouldn't be as messed up as it is. But that'll never happen because these people are real idiots.